This is Twit.
We actually have a voicemail from Sam regarding the discussion that we had on benchmarking trips.
Hi, this is Sam from Cleveland, calling regarding AA129, specifically around the topic of Samsung phones tricking the benchmark numbers. As an Android user, I don't feel like I really care that they was trying to trick the numbers, because to me, the benchmarks always show what peak performance would be like. To me, it would be akin to saying a car can go from 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. And what you're doing is you're going for peak performance and gunning the pedal, or saying a car gets 33 miles per gallon at optimal conditions. So to me, it's not really dishonest. It's just showing what the phone can do, and it's not, providing false numbers. So that's my 2 cents. Thanks for the show. Take care. Bye.
I think that's a good way to kind of think about it, except that that's not necessarily the intended way for the benchmarking apps, right? They're meant to analyze. Well, I don't know. Maybe it doesn't matter to the benchmarking apps. Maybe for those apps, it is really just about what is peak performance. I just think that the manufacturers are having to kind of change things behind the scenes in a little bit of a sneaky way in order to achieve that. Though I completely understand where you're coming from on that, as far as that's concerned. What do you guys think?
Well, in my case, it's like I think he kind of has a point, because benchmarks, the conditions that you get in benchmarks are rarely going to actually show up in real life. But at the same time, it's the way that they're fudging the numbers that's a bit of a concern, because for example, the thing that Samsung was doing, for example, and I wouldn't be surprised if others were doing as well, is basically forcing the processor to run like a full clock speed, all cores all the time, which is like, even if you're in the middle of some really intensive game, like the processor is not going to do that. So this is more or less like what the processor can theoretically do, and more like what the processor could do if you absolutely didn't care about like longevity or battery life or anything like that. It's not something that the processor can actually normally sustain. So you wouldn't actually, you're not really seeing the potential of the chip. You're seeing it sort of like almost beyond its potential, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And actually, it's interesting that you say, Samsung's doing probably other people, because it turns out fudging those benchmarks is actually pretty widespread. It's not just Samsung. AnandTech had been tracking this data with many of the devices that they've reviewed since July, and they found, by and large, nearly every manufacturer is doing this, save for Motorola and for Apple. And also absent from that list are any Nexus devices, which makes sense. This kind of thing wouldn't be built into the AOSP. So it would make it to Nexus devices. So, Samsung isn't the only company doing this with their devices. It's kind of like steroids in the Olympics or something. You know what I mean? It's like, well, if everybody's doing it, then...
Yeah, who isn't doing it?
Yeah, exactly. And Antutu, a popular benchmarking app, recently released actually a new app called Benchmark X, and that actually camouflages itself from this kind of detection, allowing it to, they say, accurately test the devices it's run on. And Tutu, of course, didn't reveal how they're pulling this off, but suddenly we're in a little bit of an arms race when it comes to benchmarking apps now too, because they're like, well, if you're gonna find your way around our process, then we're gonna find a way around your way around our thing. So we'll see where this ends.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this kind of benchmark Cold War.
I know. It's totally a benchmark Cold War. That's a great way to put it. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on this, Gina? Do you feel one way or another about benchmarking shenanigans?
I don't really have a strong opinion about it. I'm kind of with Sam. I'm kind of like, to me, I don't know. I'm kind of hippy dippy. Like, I want to know how it feels, kind of real world. And when I read reviews, I don't know. I read reviews and I like to see, what a phone was like with somebody kind of living with it in real world situations versus benchmarks. They don't matter to me too much, and it is kind of one of those things. It was like, fine, if they're gonna optimize or cheat, for the benchmark software, and everybody's doing it, then whatever. It doesn't matter anyway. What matters is how the phone performs, and you're going to get a sense of that when you kind of read the reviews by your trusted gadget reviewers.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think at least, yeah, and I think I mentioned this last week, but the reviews that I really really follow and read to a T and feel like I identify with are the ones that kind of compare the reviewer's kind of real world experience with it versus the data behind it, because that's really what it boils down to. How usable is it for you as a person on a daily basis? And if it's very usable, then that sounds like a great device.